The stakes are extremely high for the Springboks this weekend out in Cape Town. Rassie Erasmus's men need to beat the All Blacks tomorrow if they want to win the Greatest Rivalry series. The Boks were outplayed in the first test in Johannesburg last weekend. Now, Morning Live sport producer Thando Mxoli caught up with Bryan Habana, Springbok legend and one of the greatest wingers in the history of the sport. Take a look.
Bryan, let's talk about the first test, the importance of winning the first test, and the pressure that is almost created on the host to basically go on an unbeaten run.
That first test was absolutely brilliant. First of all, I think the respect which the South Africans showed the haka at Ellis Park is something I'd never experienced in my tenure as a South African, and that was pretty cool. The first 60 minutes, I think the Springboks forward and scrum dominance was something really evident. Unfortunately, not being able to capitalise on opportunities. Vice versa, the ability of this All Black team to absorb what was real form and dominance and pressure for that first 60 and then be extremely clinical in execution. Going on to score 5 tries to 1 is a pretty interesting way to finish the game, and I think there was a lot of expectations as South Africans, and if we look back at the last 8 years, what Rassie and this team have given us is the full belief that the South African team is always going to win on any given Saturday, and this All Black team showed what they bringing to the party, and it's now not an uphill climb, but it's an extremely more intense challenge for the Springboks to go on and win 3 in a row to capture the series.
A lot of missed opportunities, a lot of good ball that was created for the back line, and we didn't quite capitalize on that.
Yeah.
For a person like, for example, Sasha Feinberg, who we know has got a bright future and could be one of the game's greats.
Yeah.
What can you take from something like that? A lot of people almost said he didn't have the best of games and maybe his form is not the best, but he's got the talent to bounce back.
Yeah, it's always easy sitting on the other side and saying what went wrong, what went right, and hindsight's always the best vision. I think Rassie Erasmus has been pretty clear from the start of the season that he's going to use this sort of next 12 months period leading into a World Cup as an opportunity to experiment, as an opportunity to allow guys to find their feet, find their rhythm, and find their place within the Springbok squad. And whether that be starting, sitting on the bench, or making a difference in the greatest squad. Sasha, I don't think he's going to be one of the greats. He's on track to really show the world how good he is, and we've seen a number of moments across the last 3-4 years about what his future holds, and I think in the ability to be in the cauldron that is Ellis Park against the All Black team that's extremely clinical, extremely well drilled. There were elements that showed why he is good and as highly rated as he is, and I think as Springbok supporters, we all hope that he can continue the run of good form, but coming back 2 games after injury, I think the understanding that finding rhythm, finding feet, finding that confidence might just take a little bit longer. So, fully supportive of exactly what Rassie's plan is. He's been transparent, and I think as South Africans we can only appreciate that. He hasn't passed on accountability to anyone. He's put up his hand and taken that accountability first up, and we've seen 1 or 2 changes into the squad this week, and coming down to DHL Stadium, the Springbok team will know they've got to put everything and some on the line if they want to put a little bit of respite back into the series.
Lastly, losing Cheslin for this big one, big loss, but still very capable replacement in Ethan.
It's pretty easy for everyone to understand what a phenomenal superstar Cheslin Kolbe is, and when a player of that caliber isn't able to be selected, there could potentially be cracks seen in any team. What I love about this current team is that no matter whether you're a World Player of the Year, whether you've won double World Cups, whether you haven't played a single cap, each and every person understands the responsibility, and I think Cheslin would be working very hard with Ethan, with Kurt Lee, in and around the team this week, helping them on, and I think it's the beauty of what this team represents. No one person is greater than the collective, and it's been extremely apparent from the outset when Rassie Erasmus took over. And yes, Cheslin is an absolute global superstar and someone that is a first or at least a second name on any team sheet, and we saw his capability to contribute to the team by kicking to poles last week, taking a little bit of pressure off Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu. So yes, a big loss, but in Ethan Hooker, I think we have someone that in himself has an extremely bright future. He's extremely physical and potentially possesses other elements of strength that Cheslin doesn't, which the Springbok team will hopefully capitalise on this weekend. I think Test match rugby at its core is absolutely intense. If we look at why this series is called the Greatest Rivalry Tour, it's your two most successful teams in world rugby if you purely take World Cups and #1 ranked status in the world into consideration. The respect, I think, firstly between the two nations that are so rugby mad in their genetic makeup, the impact that rugby has had significantly in both nations is phenomenal. And I think when what we see on the park is absolutely tongue and nails, but off the park, the camaraderie, you test yourself when you play against each other. And I think Uli Schmidt, if I remember correctly, you made the comment to Sean Fitzpatrick back in 1992, there's potentially 2 times when you become a Springbok. The first time is when you pull that jersey on for the first time, and the second time is when you face the All Blacks to understand what the true test of being a Springbok is. And fast forward 34 years from getting back into the international rugby scene, the All Blacks and the Springboks have come up against each other so many times, some absolutely intense, ferocious, memorable battles. And as much as the battles on the field have been spectacles, it's been the friendships formed off it. And for us that are now outside of the game, to be able to connect with old foes, old opposition, whether it was Super Rugby or against the All Blacks, the friendships that are formed outside of this beautiful game is one of the most incredible things.